Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist podcast, and delighted to be joined today by returning guest Tom Luongo from Gold, Goats and Guns. Tom, how are you this morning?
Doing the best that I can given the last 2.5 weeks. It could be a lot worse. It's not too bad. Did wake up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, so I might be a little feisty. I'll try and keep it. I'll try and keep it on the down low. We'll see what happens.
Oh no, no,
So
no, no. Be yourself. I'm always an advocate for that. Just be yourself. It gets always gets the best out of people. Uh, I'm just looking through. I was just looking through our notes from last time, because last time you were on, we spoke about or you spoke about the good, the bad, and the British establishment. And
mm,
I'd like to touch upon that again a bit later on because of everything
sure.
we've seen in the last few weeks. And it's very easy to say, Israel and Iran and Trump and so forth. But actually, it's probably the British that are either pulling the strings. But we'll deal with that later. An
Mm,
American issue that I wanted to ask your opinion on, though, was that it seems to me that the wonderful people of New York City just want to shoot themselves in the foot with this primary between Cuomo and
mhm.
Mamdani, I think his name is, who won that primary. It just seems like a recipe for disaster. As an American, have you got a particular point of view on this of what you're seeing?
I think we may be in the position to watch a historic upset. It's funny. I was at this is going to sound like a divergence, but I was at the ceremony for Newsmax because I work for them as well, for them ringing the bell of the New York Stock Exchange, and so I was at the dinner that they threw the night before. I was chatting with people. Amy had a kind of good long talk with my publisher over there, and got and a lovely steak dinner. And late in the evening, Rudy Giuliani walks into the room. Now the Judge Napolitano's there, and a few other people whose names you would know. And then Giuliani, the mayor, sits down and is breaking bread with his entourage and all the rest of it. And then Eric Adams, the current mayor of New York, walks in, and they have an amiable conversation for about 5 minutes. I'm literally like 10 feet, 5 feet away from them at the next table over, you know, to with Giuliani. Um, with Giuliani's back to me, and Eric Adams leans in. They chat for a minute or two. They sit down, and then Eric Adams leaves. Now, I don't want to, sound conspiratorial, even though that's kind of my gig. But the 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 reality is that Adams beat Curtis Sola of the Guardian Angels the last time. Silva is going to run unopposed as the Republican. New Yorkers have no problem with Republican mayors. I mean, to be honest with you, the average New Yorker is not a shitlib. This is what people don't understand. Like, New York is a really blue collar town. Okay. It's a very blue collar town. It always has been. If you ever go to New York and walk even downtown, hell, I was at 45th Street and Fourth Avenue, in Lexington, like that area, right? I mean, like downtown. And everybody is really, really, at the end of the day, they're really blue collar people. Go out to Staten Island, and it's even worse. It's where Brooklyn has been gentrified. That's the problem. Queens has always been where my mom's family is from. Remember, this is, my dad's family's from Brooklyn. My mom's family's from Queens. I know the city isn't the same as it was when we were there, but, I was just back there and I was walking the streets and I'm like, this doesn't feel like, this doesn't feel like shitlib central anymore. You know what I mean? And when push comes to shove, New Yorkers always kind of rise to the occasion and go, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. So I would be very surprised if this guy actually wins. You know,
Mhm.
I just would be very surprised at this. And if Curtis Silva winds up being mayor of New York, that would be the most hilarious freaking thing. And the kind of the exclamation point on the end of wokeism, because this is the Guardian Angels guy. I remember when this guy was on the subway with his guys, helping the cops out in the 1970s. That was NYPD. That had a lot of opinions about the Guardian Angels. Not all of them were bad,
Mhm.
contrary to all the crap that Diane Sawyer and the rest of those fuckwits put out back then. So we're at a moment in time where this might actually be a very interesting thing. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not predicting the election. He this guy could win, whatever. and New York could, sink into irrelevance and be ground zero for the upcoming or slowly being rolled out civil war. Don't get me wrong, we could go either direction here, but at least now the New York voters have clarity as to who they're actually going to vote for. For once, they actually have radically opposed. They have people who are radically opposed, on policy and the direction for the city and everything else. And so, it's at this moment in time you're going to get the estrogen daddy, as my friend Ian Burlingame would put it,
Hmm.
who's going to hand you all the goodies and take care of the women and all of this stuff by making it sound like it's going to be great. We're going to have community grocery stores and all this nonsense, which we know is not going to work in a city like New York. Like, seriously, where supply chains on a daily basis are stretched to the limit to feed these people. Like, this is one of the most complicated supply chains in the world, and or at least it used to be. Now there are cities of 15, 18 million people that are doing that, Beijing and Moscow and Mexico City and others. Like, it's insane. But, you know, this stuff's not going to last. And you have him on the one side, and then you have, and um, then you have testosterone daddy on the other side. And do you want, and who there, and some symbolically, this is what you're dealing with. And when push comes to shove, even third wave feminists eventually, want the man that actually has muscles
Hmm.
and is willing to, like, speak with his broken with his voice actually like it broke when in his teens into his lower register, and all the basic shit about being a man. This is where it comes from, and they're going to have to make the real. They have to look real hard at themselves as to whether or not who's going to give them the security that they actually want going forward, because it's not about ideology anymore. We're not down to that. We're rapidly approaching that moment where people will really start voting safety.
Hmm.
And got news for you. That same story is playing out right now in Tel Aviv. And good, for the first time in a while, good, because I was in, I'm gonna make the intuitive leap here.
Hmm.
This is something that, excuse me, that came up the other day, um, which is that Donald Trump is more popular in Israel than Bibi Netanyahu is. Netanyahu can never get more than 30% of the vote. He's when in times of crisis, all the other feckless jackasses in Israeli politics go, yeah, you can be the guy to take this on the chin because you seem like you want to do this job, so we'll let you do it, and and then we'll stab you in the back later. Like, that's Israeli. I mean, and that's not all of Israeli politics, but that's a big driving force in Israeli politics. Now, Trump pretty much now owns Israeli politics, not the British and French, and bureaucrat, I like to call catamites, coming in from the backside, trying to get control of the Knesset and move Netanyahu out the pasture and all the rest of it. No, Trump comes out and, you know with that, what feels like a really tone deaf tweet about the defense of Bibi, and I'm like, no, no, no. That's not what this is about. He's not playing the Zionist game. This is a very simple thing. This is power politics. He's defending Bibi because Bibi did the right thing, because he's trying to actually stop the rest of this nonsense in its tracks. Let Bibi do the Churchill thing on the way out the door. And Trump is now going to set the tone as to where Israeli politics goes from here, meaning I'm going to force a solution onto you that you're not going to like.
Hmm.
So, if you want to know in a nutshell, um, what I think about Israel Iran in the post mortem, at least as of Act One, of if even if this is going to flare up again later, which is possible. Two things to say: I got my preferred outcome, a tie and a lot of injuries. Both political situations in Iran and Israel are very tenuous for the existing sitting agents of chaos. That's one. Number two, everybody got what they wanted, and they're not happy about it. Sounds like a perfect political solution to a fake and gay problem. And it's
Hmm.
always been fake and gay because the British were on both sides of the fucking trade. They were on both sides of the conflict, metaphorically running guns through proxies and through money and all the rest of it. They were shaping this conflict, and they have been shaping it for 100 years. And guess what? We now have the possibility of a real, actual, durable peace in the region. And they're freaking screaming. And they're so angry. And the neocons are all consoling themselves because Trump didn't go for regime change and, put the third coming of the Shah into power in Iran and blah, 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 blah. They know what's happening. And they gave up all of their political leverage over Trump in the process because everybody hates them now. Everybody hates them. They've been exposed completely for what they are. Traitors. They were always that in the first place. But and then worse than that is our feckless Iranian propagandized or gaslit, anti-war left and right, who were wrong about everything as well. The shit's over. Iran wants to come out of the box again and do something dumb, fine, and shoot off a bunch of missiles. Great. Okay, we'll glass Tehran. We can do it. We showed everybody what we can do. We can fly a wing of B-52s, F-22s, and F-35s halfway across the freaking planet, and nobody saw it.
Hmm.
The only
Hmm.
people who saw it were the ones in freaking the Missouri that watched them fly overhead. If you didn't have eyes on the friggin' planes, you didn't know it was coming. Everybody's technology failed. All of ours worked. I hate to break it to people. I'm not happy that we have such a great war machine. I'm not happy about any of this, But then again, I'm also done virtue signaling about being anti-war. Like I'm practically anti-war. Okay, so we have to be like, I want this shit over, and I'm willing to, punch a bunch of macho Persians in the mouth to get it done. And I'm also willing to let a bunch of bloodthirsty freaking Jews go off half cocked and do something really dumb in order to prove to everybody they're a bunch of bloodthirsty Jews. Like at the end of the day, that's what everybody's taken away from this. I'm trying to see the downside for humanity here.
Mm.
So, it's not the outcome anybody thought was going to happen, but it's the outcome everybody wanted. And what you're seeing now is a seething amount of cope on the libertarian anti-war right and the communist anti-war left and everybody in between. Whereas normal people are all going, oh, thank fucking God. Wow. Fucking Trump did it. Can we go back to work now, please?
Yeah, very, very true. Very good point. I'm just trying to think in my head, and again, call me cynical. By the way, I love that Eagles Cowboys analogy. By the way, I think you used it on a podcast the other day. I enjoy that one.
Mm-hmm.
Just the cynical part of me is, what do they have up their sleeves to flare this all up again? What?
Oh no, that's the key. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think in my head, what's the playbook now to, and I just want to point out, you're right, I agree with you that, the result that everyone's got at the moment, hands up, this is great, superb. Let's all crack on, go back to work, go back to life and so forth. But yeah, the cynical part of me just thinks, what have they got up their sleeves now? What are they going to try and do in trying to entice everyone back into this theatre of war, so to speak?
No, this is the way everybody should be thinking, right? I did a show yesterday with my friends Sean Newman and Alex Craner, and it was long, and only a very small part of it was contentious between myself and Alex because Alex has a different view of Iran than I do, and their strategy and everything else, and he kept wanting to bring it back to why I was wrong about this. I'm like, we don't need to agree on this, Alex. We need to be thinking ahead. I kept like trying to push the
Mm.
conversation to the next phase, which is where you're going immediately. Look, I may be wrong about about some of the things that have gone on here. I mean, we don't have perfect information about how this played out. Were the Iranians negotiating in good faith? Did Netanyahu betray Trump? probably all of the above is somewhat true. Like the Iranians were playing their extended pretend game. The Israelis didn't like the deal that Trump had made, blah, 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 blah. That seems to me the most likely outcome or the most likely setup for this. And then both sides tried to, you know, um, play cards they didn't have while Trump was like, dude, I'm telling you, I have aces. There's an ace on the flop. There's an ace on the turn. Like, your flush draw is busted. Like you got 2-7 offsuit. Like it's over. Stop playing. Stop. I'm betting. I'm all in.
Mm-hmm.
I just no. I'm all in. What are you doing? And then eventually, you either stay in the hand or you fold. And Iran folded. Netanyahu played his cards all the way to the end by bombing up to the last minute of the ceasefire, which then got on Trump's last freaking nerve. And then he calls him out one day and then, praises them the next day. This is very Trumpian behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So where are we going next? Which is the question. Like, this is where we are, right? Well, clearly you can see it at the NATO summit, what they're thinking about doing. They're now going to accelerate or try to accelerate bringing NATO into Ukraine. The Germans and the French and the Dutch and the British are all speaking with one voice to try and use consensus to make Trump do what he wants him to do. Viktor Orban went out and was like, did a referendum. 99% of Hungarians said no to Ukraine being in NATO. And then he walked up the stage. Excuse me. So they, the EU you're watching the EU in the process of fracturing. You're watching NATO in the process of fracturing, and they're going to try and escalate the war in Ukraine versus Russia. That's their only plan. And what Trump is saying is like, if you guys want war, that's great. Spend it because we're not spend the money, and and don't get us involved in it. And and it's funny. I'll be honest with you. There's some very interesting little nuanced points to talk about with respect to Article 5 of the NATO treaty. Macron earlier in the week before the treaty started, or it was either earlier in the week or last week, days are a jumble at this point. He said something along the lines of, it's not my job to interpret Article 5. It's for everybody to come together and and interpret it in a unitary manner. I'm like, no. That's like saying the NATO treaty then usurps our sovereignty, that NATO's Article 5 is more important than our own than the individual country sovereignty of the members that make up NATO. And like, spoken like a true globalist to actually try and make that point. And I was like, no, dude. Sorry. Last I checked, the NATO treaty does not usurp the Constitution. Please go fuck yourself in your own, your own very loose French ass. No, like, sorry, I'm not playing that game. And that was a clear moment. And then Trump turns around and was asked about Article 5. I was like, well, it depends on how you read Article 5. Lots of interpretations out there. Not gonna say. And you know what he's thinking. Like, I'm not gonna go defend France.
Mm-hmm.
We did this twice. We defended you. We came and bailed you people out because of freaking shit that Churchill did. And then the worst is the French under de Gaulle then had the goddamn nerve to hate the Americans after World War II, after we came out and we bailed them out. And de Gaulle was sitting there running a goddamn gold, running a freaking trade on us to steal our freaking gold.
Mm-hmm.
As my partner Dexter White reminded me about a month ago, he's like, oh, by the way, the Italians surrendered before the Vichy French did in World War II. Mm-hmm. Meaning the Vichy French who were working for the freaking Germans were fighting us in World War II longer than the goddamn Italians did. Well, it's maybe because the Italians understand that war is stupid. I still can't understand how Italy got involved in World War II. I'm still trying to figure this out. But again, Venetian banks, this, that, and you can somebody out there will craft some serious Alex Jones level shit about this. I love Alex, but I think he's crazy. But that's the way things are. That's what we'll get. Like, and that's fine if, and they'll probably make good YouTube content. Not that this is going to make new good YouTube content, whatever. I don't care. It's the end of the week. I'm really freaking tired. So, and I got way too much work to do still. And I'm trying to get prepped to go on vacation in a couple of days and get away from all this nonsense for a little bit. But I think that's where they're going to go next. They're going to try and, they're going to try and gin up Ukraine. And then in a couple of months, there will be I'm waiting for a false flag operation by the British or the MEK inside Iran to blame on Israel. I'm waiting for the British operation in the United States to blame it on Iran. Like, you can see it coming and everybody's talking about it. So we can see you, MI6. So, have a good day, but like, nobody wants it. And no one gives a shit anymore. And this isn't a John le Carré novel, okay? Like, it's over. And, if anybody just, wanted to, like, if anybody wanted to drop a nuke at this point, I think everybody would cheer friggin', GCHQ got attacked nuke. I think everybody would be like, oh. So, I mean, you guys know you're hated around the world. And this is not Brits, but yes, Brits, but not, but a specific kind of British. Like, we know this is the problem. We know this is all bullshit and kayfabe and, and all this, all the rest of this crap. We know that there are traitors still within the CIA and the intelligence community in the United States. Tulsi Gabbard was telling you this when she said the IC believes that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. That's Biden's IC she took over. She was in charge for what? 60 days? Do you think you remake the entire U.S. intelligence community in 60 days? If you do, you might be a libertarian. So, like, this is the thing I think everybody needs to wrap their heads around this morning. If you're truly anti-war, Tulsi Gabbard is your model. This is a woman who doesn't want war, but is willing to fight to not have any more of this nonsense. They're willing to take a position that may or may not be in accordance with her principles. This woman of all people is in charge of intelligence and of coordinating the intelligence in the United States. You think that's was her dream job? No, of course not. It's the job that was the best place for her to serve, to at least minimize the perfidy, so that Donald Trump got good information, or at least more good information than he got in his first term, or Biden ever got, even if you believe Biden was the president, or anything else. We all know how important the president's daily brief is, and we know that we have somebody that we can trust in that role. The problem that we have in the alternative media space today, and this is the thing I have been warning everybody about, warning all my colleagues about for months now. And it sounds arrogant and it sounds obnoxious, and it is what it is, but it's true, which is they're weaponizing your skepticism against you. They're weaponizing your tendency toward your heuristic of being oppositionally defiant to whatever the government says, to deny it. It's my whole shtick about distrust but verify, right? That is a good heuristic, as if you distrust everyone, though, and you have no no guideposts, no things that you can, no foundations, no pillars that you can, and nodes of stability you can work off of. If you distrust everything, you're Thomas Massey, grandstanding for friggin' political contributions from every libertarian in America, rather than serving his own district and serving a greater cause of trying to actually turn the tide and fix the problem. It's the Mises Institute who got pissed off with me when I said, dudes, it's time for you guys to go to Washington and help craft solutions to what we're doing wrong at the Fed and Treasury and everything else. Nope. Not interested. Like, this is what we're dealing with. Like, we can know that Trump is reasonably in control of things. It's not perfect, but we know, because they fucking hate him, and they still hate him. Now the Dutch are trying to schmooze him. Notice it's the Dutch. Go back to my friend Ian Burlingame. Notice how the Dutch king and queen showed up. Mark Rutte called him freaking daddy, for Christ's sake. This is the Dutch trying to get out from underneath this, they know he's pissed off with the British, So now the Dutch are coming in to play good cop, bad cop, and Trump's like, "Oh, go fuck yourself." Okay, so like we're in a much different world than we ever thought, and I think it's time to say, no, Trump's going to make mistakes, but broadly, I trust him.
Hmm.
I'm willing to sit here and go, he's trying to do the right thing, and he might make mistakes, as opposed to going, he did something I don't like. I hate Trump now. Like, okay, 4-year-old, that's nice, but you don't get to play in the grown up table. You don't get to sit at the grown up table. Grown ups are talking. Shut the fuck up. And that's where people like Dave Smith and all these other people, and I'm watching them all melt down, Robert. And I'm like, and you guys could be, and what pisses me off is that obviously they have a lot to bring to the table analytically and observationally, and they're not using it. They're being completely frozen at a moment in time when they're winning. And I think what may be really bothering people is that things are happening that they never thought could happen and and will happen, and they're not a part of it.
Makes
Their
sense.
egos are their egos are shot, and we're
Hmm.
watching the meltdowns everywhere. As opposed to eyes on the prize. What's the goal? What's the goal? Israel and Iran beaten, the fuck beat out of them. Neither of them with a viable nuclear program going forward is what I think. The Iranians hit very strategic targets that the Israelis don't want anybody to know about, but we know that they hit those targets because the shit was leaked and then it was suppressed. They hit Dimona. They hit their nuclear research facility in Tel Aviv. They hit Haifa. They hit the Mossad headquarters. Like, they proved that they can fire pinpoint ballistic missiles and take out targets with a reasonable circular error projection for, under these circumstances.
Hmm.
Good enough. And on the other side, the Israelis pulled off some amazing fucking shit on that first night. Just, strip out who did it, right? And go, wow, that was an impressive multimodal attack on an enemy. You had Mossad agents on the ground. You've been building drone factories for 2 years. You set everything in motion. You neutralized their AA. You beat up their, you disrupted their command and control. They were blind for 12 hours. And by the time the whole thing was over, the Israelis are flying cap over friggin' Tehran. Like, you gotta, golf clap for it. Like, it's, golf clap for the operation, for the guys who pulled it off.
Mm.
And that set the tone for the entire war. And I look at that from Trump's perspective and go, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to happen. Because now it tells the Iranians, who have this machismo thing in their culture, that, oh, by the way, you've been beaten. Now I'm going to give you an opportunity to save face. So light off the missiles you need to light off, but you're going to lose this war because you can't. Because it was really obvious after the first couple of days, right? So the first attacks on Thursday night, our time, right? By Saturday, we were sitting there talking, going, you know what? If Iran doesn't fire off 500 freaking missiles and like level Tel Aviv tomorrow, this war's over. Because what it means is that Israel degraded their launcher capability to the point where they may have 30,000 rockets or 30,000 missiles. That's nice. But if you only got 5 guns to shoot them through,
Hmm.
or 10 guns to shoot them through, or 100 guns to shoot them through, and you light off 50 on night number 1, and then the Israelis like find them all and then wipe them out. Every launcher they had left, because the Israelis were flying cap over Tehran, meant that they were all single-use weapons, single-use launchers, because then they get bombed. And they're done. Next, I mean, plus or minus, 10%, 20%, whatever, to whatever operational efficiency each bombing run would be, whatever, however successful they are. But metaphorically speaking, or, practically speaking, yeah, you fire them once, boom, that's it. So that's why we saw 200 missiles the first night, 100 missiles the next night, 50, 20, 10, 5, done, right? Same thing happened to all the HIMARS that we sent to Ukraine. They got to fire them once. Very expensive systems, really good weapons. And the Russians were like, oh, thank you for lighting those up. And then they just use a fucking pop gun. Done. I've got 150 millimeter, 55 millimeter guided artillery shell. Guided meaning the targeting solution is, oh, that's where it is. And I can guide that dumb shell on target for $20. And I just took out a $20 million HIMARS system. Hey, dude, I can do this all day. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, that's, relatively speaking, maybe it's a $500, with $1,000, make a 155 millimeter shell. Who gives a shit? Doesn't matter. The point is, it's a completely asymmetric situation. And that's why Ukraine is in trouble. And that's why the Europeans are, wanting to spend money to go to war. And what they're trying to do is extend this out for as long as possible. So what you're seeing right now, really, from the Europeans is they're trying to appease Trump so that they can rearm and reload. See, the real ceasefire is between Europe and the United States at the NATO summit. It's not between Israel and Iran. Israel and Iran are not getting ready to rearm and reload. Trump's in control of Israeli politics. Putin's in control of Iranian politics, relatively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And, Turkey and Syria are another problem that's going to be on the horizon. Expect the British to, try and flare something up there in order to get everybody into the fight again. They're ginning up nonsense in the Balkans when the interview I did with Alex and Sean comes out on Monday. I think it's Monday, in a couple of days. When that comes out, I absolutely recommend everybody listen to Alex's discussion about the Balkans. He brought it up. I'm like, dude, talk, please. Really important because, he's closer to it than I am. And, and it's, so there's that. Russia, Ukraine. But, Trump and Putin speak on a regular basis. I everything that's been playing out hasn't been kayfabe, because I hate that. I mean, some of it is. Some of what we're seeing is kayfabe. But some of this is just statecraft. What everybody's now calling what is normal statecraft, they're all now we're all calling it fake and gay. I'm like, no, that's just statecraft. Statecraft's always been fake and gay. That's just the way it works. That's the game. And if you don't understand the game, then you don't understand the game. So now you come up with something. I like fake and gay, but I prefer fake and gay for like the capital markets, because that's clearly what's going on there. So, and I don't mean that the Dow shouldn't be levitating at 43,000 and 43.5 or whatever. I mean like that the euro is at $1.17, and people still think the Hong Kong dollar peg is going to survive, and there's all sorts of shit that's going on. It's like, and broadly speaking, the reason I was never really worried about this war getting out of control, spiraling out into infinity, was one, what I just went over with the efficacy of the initial attack by Israel and Iran, which just put Iran on their back foot. So meaning the war couldn't escalate. Mm-hmm. And then two, the capital markets kept looking at this going, yeah, I'm not interested. It never made any sense that Iran would actually close the Strait of Hormuz. Again, that's another one of those bluffs. The hand after the big hand. It was always a bluff. Okay, it was always a bluff, because if they were to do it, the entire world would be like, okay, that's enough. Take out these fucks. We don't care if it's right, wrong. We don't care who started it. We don't give a shit. $200 barrel oil. That's all the world is saying. Okay. And when you dig into it deeper, you realize none of that strategy, including, in my mind, nuclear deterrence, was in the best interest of Iran's new patrons, Russia and China. It keeps Iran at the center of global chaos. What's anathema to global trade? Global chaos.
Mm-hmm.
The strategy is that shitty little island up in the north of Europe, and the Dutch and the French and the Germans, and like, whose strategy is that? So as far as I'm concerned, whether Iran was working for or working with Davos, slash City of London or not, which I do believe they are, at least I think the IRGC was. They were carrying their water for them by pursuing this strategy because it wasn't in the long-term best interest of the internet, either the international north-south transport corridor or Belt and Road, because the real win is the United States, Russia, and China getting together and carving up the world in a new alignment that leaves Europe, you know, going through another dark age while everybody else gets to go through the next enlightenment or whatever you want to call it, the next realignment. So that's what I see on the horizon. That's what I see. That's what I see Putin and Trump working for. I don't know about Xi, but I can see that if Xi's in trouble in China, it's because now he's outlived his usefulness to the people in China that actually run China, right? Xi was necessary to kick the European money out, keep the border closed, keep the he was useful to them for this period of history. He like Netanyahu may wind up being not useful to anybody on the backside of this. But Trump and Putin are indispensable at this point. They're not going anywhere, which is of course why the British want to kill both of them.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. To be perfectly honest, Tom, I was thinking, and again, maybe I'm going and trying to play 8D chess, and I don't need to. Do you think at any
No,
point Trump has, or the Saudis were involved in the last few weeks, like there's a deal in the background? Because obviously Saudi
of course
Arabia
they
and
were.
Iran aren't the best of friends. How? What sort of things are we talking about? How are they involved?
Well, the Saudis, like everybody else, are, you know, and the rest of the Gulf states all bought into Trump's plan. I mean, when Trump went to the Middle East and cut all those deals, last month, that was your signal that this thing was on that this attack was, that he was going to allow for this attack to happen once his 60-day ultimatum to Iran ran out.
Mhm.
Like, look, you get 60 days. I can only hold these fucking crazy Jews back for another 60 days, and then they're coming for you. And if you negotiate in bad faith, I'm gonna let it happen. Day 61, boom, it happens. They negotiated in bad faith. They thought they could play the typical Davos, extend and pretend. No, we're negotiating, but we're really not giving anything up. I mean, honestly, Iran's position, while on the surface sounding very reasonable, we will give up nuclear weapons. We will give up nuclear enrichment if the Israelis give up their nuclear weapons. Sounds reasonable on the surface. It's really not practical, and everybody knows it because nobody trusts Iran. Because, like, dude, they've been bullying everybody around the region for decades.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter whether, and this is where my friend Alex Grainer and I have sincere disagreement. And when I say things like that, it gets him very angry. And fine, it's his perspective on things. And I'm not trying to, he may be right that I'm wrong. I don't care. It doesn't matter. This is my perspective. This is the way I'm looking at it, which is that looking at things not just from Iran's point of view as to whether they were, I think they were backed into this strategy, this axis of resistance nuclear deterrence strategy. I think that the British put them, and Europe and the Americans and Israel pushed them into thinking they had no other option, because it really didn't start until after the Soviet Union fell and Russia was weak and China was in no position to do anything. And so for that 20 years up until around 2010, when Obama started negotiating the JCPOA, which started in 2010, and he lied about it up until 2013. And then remember Obama cut Iran out of the SWIFT system in December of 2011. Come to the table, give us what we want, blah, 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 blah. It was all bullshit.
Mhm.
Like, they were forced into this arrangement, and doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, nuclear proliferation is Davos's gig. They want global chaos. They want everybody worried about what madman is going to have a nuclear weapon next.
Mhm.
Where will the little green man light off a nuke in next? This is all like Philip K. Dick shit. This is like, it's right there. And um and so when you back out and you look at things from the big grand strategy perspective, not from everybody, not from whether, who started it and who didn't, it doesn't matter. Iran was pushed into the, I can make the argument Iran was pushed into this, and I can understand it. I can still disagree with it, right? I can disagree with, they shouldn't have done that, but they did it. And I can understand why they did it. And it was ultimately, they made a bad choice, if you want my honest opinion. I'll be honest. But up until 2015, 2016, maybe that was the right choice. And then Trump comes to power, and Trump's like, no, this is unacceptable. I know what you all are doing. I can see what you're doing, and I'm not going to allow it. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to make it my life's mission to stop this. And no one believed him. Well, they believe him now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I think Iran's whole gig is over from that perspective. They're going to cut deals. They're going to get real buy-in from everybody. Trump is, saying, I don't want regime change. The neocons aren't happy, blah, 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 blah. So the Saudis are part of this as well. Like they're part of the buy-in of let's get the region buying into rebuilding all the areas devastated by all this chaos. I think Trump is going to force the Israelis to rebuild Gaza. You're not going to hand it over to him. He's going to make him rebuild it. He's not happy with this. And so, like I've said before, like I've been trying to say, and I don't know how this is going to happen. I just can see the broad stroke of it to say it's pretty clear that Israel is going to pay for their crimes in Gaza. And the Arabs are going to pay for their crimes in abandoning the Palestinians and using them for 50 years because they did. And the Russians did, and the Americans did, and the Israelis did, and the British did, and the French did. Everybody did. Well, everybody then gets fucking buy-in to rebuild this place. Same thing that's going to have to happen in the end in Syria and in Tehran, and let Tel Aviv, fend for itself. Like that's my ungenerous read. Like, and I'm sorry if that makes me a Zionist shill, like the Spurgs on Twitter want to make me out to be. Fine, I'm okay with that. I'll own that. Yep, I'm a Zionist shill. See, there you go. Like, it's just dumb. Like, let's stop using our brains for something. Let's start using our brains for something other than fucking a hat rack. And we have deals to be made. And you'll notice that our American and European left immediately start the whole process. When we go to rebuild Gaza, they're going to turn it all into like Trump Tower and Trump Hotel and shit. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Trump's like, that's the dumbest shit imaginable. There's not running water there. I can't build a casino there if I wanted to. Who's going to come? It's such hyperbolic nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that the administration is literally just now calling out all these people as just being hyperbolic, anti everything, just oppositionally defiant all the way to the end. You're watching the end of, I think you're also, interestingly enough, watching the end of female politics.
Okay.
Feminine politics, for lack of a better term, just so because there are plenty of women who are like I said, I watched. Tulsi Gabbard is in the perfect position to do what needs to be done, right? To keep the family mission, mission focused, and to run interference and to keep everybody moving in the right direction, and she's perfect at DNI for that. Right. And because of her personality, because of her, so that makes sense. The idea that, but she also warned us. And this is the thing that everybody wants to forget. I read her book. I don't know if anybody else did, but I did. And I'm like, this woman is like, these Islamic crazies are a problem. And we need to deal with them. And and doesn't matter whether we created them or we didn't create them. We have to deal with it. And there's a means by which we get there. And she's in a position, as DNI director, to start the process of really reforming all the intelligence agencies. And that's a problem. It's a big problem. It's a long problem.
Mm-hmm.
But the main way we get there is by ultimately bankrupting the people that we're fighting, which is the British, the French, the Dutch, all that old money they have to be forced to disgorge all that savings and all that ill-gotten wealth that they've gotten over the years, and they've stuffed in banks no one's ever heard the name of, that have 12 clients, okay, managing billions and billions of dollars, like glorified family offices. Um, these things, they have to take all that money, disgorge it onto the table to try and stop what's happening. We're not quite there yet. We're still just staunching the flow of the public money that they've been using against, using our own tax money against us. We haven't finished that phase yet. Your people in England are going through this right now. Canadians are just beginning to feel it, really feel it, and Albertans and British Columbians. I don't know how, and the people from Saskatchewan, Manitobans, they all have to like make a decision now, and I think they're very close to making that decision. So it's going to be very interesting. The world is. I don't know about you, Robert, but I tweeted out on Thursday night after the Israelis attacked. I'm like, in 48 hours, the world we thought we knew will be unrecognizable. And I don't know about you, but this world doesn't look anything like anybody predicted, and not even me. Okay, I had no idea when I wrote that. I literally meant I have no clue how this is going to lay out, but I also know that no one else does either. And it would be nice if people would be a little bit more humble on a regular basis. I mean, I know my whole shtick is to be an arrogant dick, but I know when to cop to ignorance, and certainly in the middle of Israel attacking Iran, I'm copping to ignorance, because everybody who took a hot take pretty much was wrong.
Yeah, I remember just after that happened, had Dr. Anis Al-Hajji on the podcast, and he's oil, gas, all things Middle East, and he made it very clear that the Iranians wouldn't close the Strait of Hormuz, and explained why. And I really enjoyed that. And then I got into various debates and arguments on LinkedIn with people going, "Oh no, they're going to close it," and I was like, "No, this is exactly why they're not going to close it, because of these reasons." And I think anyway, so that all of that.
What did Anas say? Actually, I want to know.
So
Was it?
he made the point at the time, and it still rings true. So I follow him on X and so forth. His point was that if you look at the Strait of Hormuz and look at a map of that area, he said with the Strait of Hormuz, a lot of the shipping actually goes through the Omani side because it's too shallow on the Iranian side. So the fact that people think that Iran could just shut it down, not happening, because the shipping actually goes through on the other side. So they would need that as well. Of course, when it goes around there, you're into the Persian Gulf. Who's the other side of the Persian Gulf? Saudi Arabia. Good luck with that as well. Other points he made was that on a more geopolitical point of view, that he's talking about regime change, and I'm not going to say he was upset, but he was frustrated that people were just throwing around regime change like it could happen with a click of your fingers. And he pointed out that, number one, look at the geography of Iran. Look where it is on a map. And I know that you're going to know this, but for people that don't, he said, look at Iran on a map. He said, you've got to look at obviously what's to the south, Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz. We've just discussed that. He said, look what's to the north. He said, Caspian Sea. He said, you've got 5 countries that are border the Caspian Sea. You've got Iran, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Russia. Now, he said, if you think that the Russians are going to allow any form of US pro regime in Iran, not happening.
Right.
Absolutely not happening. And then, of course, you got China with Belt and Road, as you discussed earlier, flowing to the east. The other point he made was that a lot of goods and services that leave Iran via the Strait of Hormuz actually go to China. So why would Iran want to shoot themselves in the foot that way either? So that's a summary of what he was talking about.
Yeah, that's pretty much okay. So Anas and I are in yeah, we're in cahoots about that. We agree on that. Yeah, no, all of those points are well taken. It's like the point is, and this was something I said to Larry Johnson on Thursday night. I was on the phone with Larry. He had just come back from Moscow. And he kept trying to make the argument that the Russians care about, who's in charge in Iran. I'm like, no, they don't. They don't care who's in charge in Iran. He's like, but it's the international North-South transport corridor. I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's why they don't care who's in charge in Iran. You've got it backwards, Larry. They don't need the theocracy to stay in charge in order for the INSTC to go forward. The same way that China does not need the theocracy to they didn't make those deals with the theocracy. They made those deals with the civilian government.
Hmm.
And civilian government is the weakest. Now that I think about it, I didn't make this point to him at the time, and I'm making it now. Of all the factions within Iran, right? The civilian military, the Ayatollah, the Islamic Council, the IRGC, and the civilian military. The civilian government, civilian military, IRGC, Islamic Council. The civilian government is the weakest one. It's everybody knows that the reformists aren't really reformists; that they're handpicked by the theocratic council, but all those big deals with the civilian government.
Hmm.
Okay. In effect, what they were doing was trying to fortify the civilian governments. Now, when you think that through, and again, just popped into my head as we're speaking here. Never made this point before, but it makes sense that all the deals that have been made by Russia and China were to support the civilian government in order to prop it up and give it power within Iran. Why? To stabilize it and to take power away from the IRGC and whatnot. And so they're absolutely going to be okay with Israel decapitating the IRGC leadership.
Mm.
They're going to be okay with effectively neutering the leadership of Hezbollah. And it's why they pulled out of Syria and, stopped backing Assad. They couldn't stop it per se. And I'm not saying that Putin and Erdogan trust each other, because they don't. And I know that there's British influence there in Damascus now. But, my argument has been like Iran is more, all the Russians and the Chinese care about is stability. Trade depends on stability. The point about the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, I know Anas makes that point. I just wanted to make sure that, I wanted to know what the argument was there. And I saw the whole thing about, most of the deep water is on the Omani side. So they'd have to get Oman to buy in. Like, no, they don't. They have missiles like pointed right at the thing. They can fly, they can move attack boats in and disrupt. They can mine the whole freaking thing if they wanted to. What would happen then is that Tehran would be bombed into submission. What was left of the Iranian Air Force would be gone, and the Iranian Navy would be obliterated in 4 to 6 hours. That is what was on the table. That's the part everybody doesn't want to talk about. That's the reality of the situation. That's why Trump bombed Fort Natanz and Esfahan the way he did. He could have sent the B-2s in from Diego Garcia. He could have just sent some planes in from friggin' U.S. CENTCOM out of Bahrain. He didn't. He flew an entire fucking wing of the American Air Force from Missouri. Oh, by the way, we didn't use any assets in theater to do this. We have all of those as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sorry, but I told you guys 8 months ago, I was on a podcast with Pete Canones, and we were both talking about this. I'm like, the return of power politics is here. The end of consensus politics is upon us. And you're all arguing from a consensus politics perspective and not a power politics perspective. And I told you got to stop doing that. Stop it. These guys are mob bosses, and they're going to act like mob bosses. If you're not sure what to do, go watch The Godfather, go watch the Scorsese movie. It's the cheapest geopolitical lesson you'll get this week. They're $3 on Amazon. Okay? Because everybody's arguing from this like non-confrontational, bullshit perspective. And that's not how geopolitics works. Geopolitics is about leverage and incentives. And everybody thought they had leverage and incentive over Trump, and they found out that they didn't. Because guess what? Everybody was fucking lying. Everyone. The Iranians, the British, the French, the Americans, the Germans, the Dutch, the Russians, the Chinese, the Israelis, all of them. The Saudis, they were all lying. All that matters, though, at the end of the day, is what they do.
Hmm.
Okay. And then we can argue about why they're doing what they're doing. Fine. Well, the facts will bear themselves out depending on how. And then what you have to do then is there are the facts. Now look at the facts from 4 or 5 different perspectives and see which one best fits the data and what best fits everybody's incentive. That's all I do. I don't like. I'm not like. Oh, you know. I'm just good at it. Why? Because I like it and I'm good at it. And I can do multivariant analysis like this in my head. I've got thousands and thousands of hours of doing it, not just analyzing this, but doing it on the gaming table. And eventually, if you do something for 10,000 freaking hours, Malcolm Gladwell tells us, you get good at it. And there's a lot of people out there who've been doing it for 100 hours and they're not good at it. And Honest is one of those people who is good at what he does. I don't always agree with him, but but that's fine. I don't have to agree with him. I don't have to agree with my friend Alex Craner. I don't have to agree with Barry Johnson. I don't have to agree with anybody. I don't have to agree with my partner Dexter Way. We have the bitter freaking fights over China, like behind the scenes. Okay, like we do, and we always have. And subscribers to our newsletter will know that because Dexter makes it abundantly clear. This is his perspective. And when he writes, in his article, he writes every month, and I write my shit, and there's a tonal shift between the two of them. It's not, it's not all of it all day goddamn long. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's why I started Gold Goats and Guns with him. I knew that at some point I was going to need that balancing factor here. Otherwise, I got news for you. I wouldn't be here today because I don't know about anybody else, but almost everybody else looks like they have egg on their face. And I warned everybody about this. I warned the entire alt media from Tucker Carlson down to, pick the lowest podcast out there. And I said, don't get married to the narratives that have gotten you clicks to this point. You have to be willing to dare everything. On 10/8, I refused to take a side between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and between the Israeli and Hamas. I was willing to engage Israeli propaganda and Western propaganda, but mostly Davos propaganda about the Palestinians equally. Eventually, the facts will turn themselves out. We'll get a picture of what happened that day. The picture will be murky at best, but it'll probably have a high probability cloud because I like to do probability cloud analysis because I'm a quantum mechanics guy at heart. I'm not really a Newtonian physics guy. Mm-hmm. Only when I'm playing baseball, and that means when we're doing power politics and we're beating people over the head with a baseball bat. Remember, you can get further with a kind gun and a baseball bat than you can with just a kind word, right? Mm-hmm. So, or kind word and a gun than you can, than just a kind word. To quote Al Capone from the Untouchables. So, this is where you have to play in that space. You have to know when to shift your perspective, and you have to know and you have to realize that sometimes people are saying things and they're just vamping, they're just reacting in real time, and it doesn't mean you've lost them. And the worst part about our internet culture is that you say something that somebody disagrees, you say something one day that somebody disagrees with you on, and all of a sudden you're dead to them.
Mm-hmm. True.
Because there's no chance for forgiveness in this world. Who acts like that? Who encourages that kind of behavior? Now, when you start asking those uncomfortable freaking questions, and that's where you have to be. When you ask those uncomfortable questions about how easily it is to become gaslit about X or Y or Z, like the minute I saw the pro-Palestinian like ginned up out of whole cloth, as my friend Dave Bradley pointed out in the last episode of the podcast we did together, like the whole paper straw thing. Like we went from one picture of a turtle with a plastic straw up his nose, and some 5-year-old wrote an essay that got disseminated around the world to the next day they were passing out paper straws. You don't just spring that supply chain up like dwarven women out of holes in the ground, for Christ's sake. It doesn't just occur. It takes time to build that. You have to you have to, you got to put money in place. You got to tool up. You got to tool up all the production. Then you got to do the distribution. Then you got to have the warehouses filled. Then you got to get. I mean, all of this shit. Then you got to get the local governments to demand that this is what we're doing, and all of this other crap. So it was an operation. Well, I got news for you. The pro-Palestinian astroturf that we saw on 10/8 was all pre-planned, meaning somebody knew that 10/7 was. That's the biggest argument yet. That 10/7 was a false flag. The big question is whose false flag?
Mm.
And obviously the British. And I think Alex is right. The British and the Qataris did this in order to create a 9/11 event that would galvanize the Israeli people to want to genocide the friggin' Palestinians, to now turn them into the global villain, so that a year and a half later, we can then gin up war with Iran. Then you tell Iran on the other side, hey, keep pushing. You're winning the negotiation here. Keep pushing your enrichment. Meanwhile, they're sitting back going, everything is proceeding as I have foreseen, like the fucking emperor. Mm-hmm. Like, and remember, by the way, while the prequel films may be shit from an execution perspective, from a story perspective, Emperor Palpatine was on both sides of the freaking war. He was controlling the separatists and the response from the Jedi and the Republic. And the Jedi were caught in the middle. And then the good guys were turned into the bad guys. Right? You either die a hero or you live just long enough to become the villain. And the Jedi became the villain. And we're watching it play out now. And I think that both Israel and Iran were rapidly depreciating assets that needed to be touched off and lit off now to try and ignite global freaking conflict. And Trump and Putin, and to a lesser extent, and to his credit, in the moment, the Ayatollah and his negotiating staff saw what was happening and stopped it dead cold. Not Netanyahu. And now, now the schmooze is happening, right? Like I said, now they're trying to schmooze Trump, butter him up because they think he likes flattery. It's all this. They're so bad at this. Like the current crop of European leadership is so bad at what they're doing. They used to be good at this. I mean, but these fucking catamites are like, they are so fucking bad. And they don't know what to do with Trump, and they don't know what to do with Putin. And it's hilarious. And watching them go down in flames is going to be great. It's going to be dangerous. It's going to be this. People are going to die. I don't know who, but I know people are going to die. And I know there's going to be another, massive provocation that will target civilians. I mean, the probability is too high. The stakes are too high. So, they're trying to touch off the civil war in the United States. Thankfully, Trump's got that ring fence so far as well. So it's June. It's the end of June. We'll probably get a lull for most of July. It'll be about trade stuff. It'll be about a lot of other things. And then by August, as those negotiations fail and that schmooze campaign fails, and Trump's still like, that's nice that you want to negotiate, Ursula von der Satan, on a trade deal. But, if you don't accede to my terms, 50% tariffs. I'm open to negotiation here. But you're going to have to negotiate in good faith, or you get 60 days. So July 10th is going to be great.
Well, yeah, of course. I was just about to. I appreciate just looking at time there. Appreciate we should wrap up sooner rather than later. I was going to ask you on that. Obviously, in July, Independence Day and so forth, and then 9th of July. That's when that 3-month stance it stops on the tariffs. So I was going to ask you, what do you think's a likely outcome there? But I think you've just explained it quite well.
No, it's the European Union are they're the key. Everybody else is falling in line. Like everybody else knows that they can't survive without the American consumer. The Chinese, what's happening to the Chinese that people can't see at this point is that, look, we're in that mode now where people have to start making their orders for the Christmas season. And those orders aren't coming in. And when you're the producer and you're a leveraged producer, you don't have any power. All you can do is cut prices. The consumer is sovereign, my friends. Always has been, always will be, no matter how much they try to alter the calculus with tax and spend authority and debt issuance and all the rest of it. Eventually, you run out of other people's money because Margaret Thatcher was not wrong. Eventually, you run out of debt to issue and all of that. I know now the spurgy libertarians, of the three of them that are still left in the audience, will be like, "Oh, that's why we don't want to vote. That's why Thomas Massey is right. Don't you understand?" Like, no, our debt, our national debt is easy to deal with. And I have explained it 1,000 times, but because you can't do second order analysis because you're a fucking child. Okay. Like, this is not hard. We have $32 trillion worth of homeowner equity in this country that we can monetize tomorrow. We have hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of assets that we have our payment channels, our payment chains, our rule of law, our corporate law, all of it. It's worth trillions of dollars in goodwill and intangibles on the United States balance sheet. What does Malaysia have? Nothing. Sorry, no offense to Malaysians. No offense to Malaysians at all. What does Europe have? Nothing. We control SWIFT. We control the payment channels. We control the dollar, the value of the dollar now, not you. What Europe always had was the control over the value of our dollar. That's what they had. Mm-hmm. And they used it to bankrupt us and make us pay for all of their bullshit. That's over. And they're angry because that's been their system for 400 fucking years or 350 years, whatever. Pick a date in the past. You can take the Bank of England in 1694. You can go to the Venetian banks of the freaking 1500s. I don't give a shit. Pick one of them. Make a number. Subtract from 2025. Bob's your uncle. Mm-hmm. But that system is ending. China wants it. Russians want it. Americans want it. Middle East wants it. Who doesn't want it? The Balkans want it. Mexico doesn't want it yet because, there's a WWIII cartel puppet in charge in Mexico City who happens to have an unfortunate last name. Mark Carney doesn't want it, but Canada wants it. It's better to just start calling it Canada so that people stop thinking that it's Canada, because it's not going to be Canada for very much longer. Mm. No offense. My Canadian friends agree with me. So they're done. They don't want to be a part of that shithole country anymore either. Most of them. And the ones that do, mazel tov, stay where you are. Make your defense pact with the European Union. Without the engine of Alberta and Saskatchewan and British Columbia, you don't have a country. I mean, honestly, Calgary should be the capital of Canada. Like, I don't see how it isn't, but
Yeah, I remember you were saying, obviously you were up there a little while ago, and on recent podcasts you were talking as well at length about things that are going on in Canada, should we say? Tom,
I love it.
Yeah, there's so much going on that these conversations are always a pleasure because I'm nodding and going to because I'm always learning a lot, and I've got things that I want to go away and research as well. I appreciate we're a little bit tight for time, but I will ask you this question: is there anything
Sure
that you this could go on any way you want it to go? Is there anything you haven't talking about that you think people need to know about, like at this point in time?
The thing I have glossed over here is to watch the financial markets, but in order to be able to watch the financial markets at a level where you can understand what's happening, stop looking at the US dollar index. That's policy. Okay. What's happening in the forex markets is the precursor to um, a very, very big, sovereign debt crisis. And if you're confused about the broad strokes of it, I did a podcast a month and a half ago, or almost 2 months ago now, with Brent Johnson, episode 214, where Brent and I go over what de-dollarization versus re-dollarization looks like. Okay. And if you don't understand what's being set up by the Trump administration, by Scott Bessent, if you don't understand what Bessent's background, if you don't understand that this is the guy who helped George Soros break the Bank of England and destroyed the ERM of the time, the exchange rate mechanism of the time, then you don't understand that he's probably right now running an operation to destroy the peg of the Hong Kong dollar to the US dollar. And that a lot of what's going on between Trump and Jerome Powell is because of Trump's need to try and get interest rates down to roll the debt out in time in order to be able to afford to do the things that he wants to do. We're a month away from the next FOMC meeting. Powell's going to cut rates. Powell's going to cut rates by 50 basis points. That's my prediction. I may be wrong, but that's my prediction. My prediction is he'll go 50 here because he should have gone 25 in June, but he didn't have the data to do so. And honestly, before the attack on Iran and, trade deals with China finished and it would have been really hard for him to cut interest rates into that environment. I mean, he would have been an irresponsible Fed chair to cut interest rates. If he had done so, it would have been a tell that the attack was coming. Or no, but no, that happened after sorry, never mind. I backed that up. I forgot. The FOMC meeting was on the 18th. So sometimes you get the dates wrong. Powell cutting in the middle of the war is it's still a bad message. And, and the data isn't bad. Like I made this point on a podcast the other day. I happened to be scrolling through my Twitter feed, and we'll leave it with this. And we had two different views of the American economy. We had Daniel DiMartino Booth, and we had Daniel Akaye, both of whom I have tremendous respect for as macro analysts. Tremendous respect for them. Danielle was giving us the bearish case, saying that Powell is playing politics and needed to cut in June, and because of this data. And then there's Daniel on the other side looking at all the macro data, put it all together. And it's on balance, the U.S. economy is growing at 4.5%. That's it's a hard argument for him to cut. But again, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, or if I didn't say it explicitly here, I've said in other places, Trump and Netanyahu could have wanted an attack on Iran for different reasons. Right? Bibi wanted regime change. Trump wanted to end the nuclear, wanted to start the process of ending the Gordian knot of the Iran-Israeli conflict, blah, 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 blah. And they could want the same thing for different reasons. Well, Trump and Powell want different things for different reasons, right? I see Powell as wanting to destroy the offshore dollar markets by keeping the dollar liquidity tight. And he's doing that to support Trump's ultimate goal of breaking Europe. Trump is looking at the situation as it stands right now, trying to get the political, situation under control. And any challenge to his authority at this point, while he still is wrangling with a Senate that's in revolt, is driving him nuts. So I don't know. They can want the same thing, but for different reasons and in different order of operations. And Trump could want to think this is more important, the rollover, this, that, and everything else. And Powell will be like, there's no guarantee that if I cut rates at the long end of the yield curve, it's going to fall. With Trump securing a ceasefire in 12 days over Israel-Iran, now you're watching capital flow into the United States. Now you're watching the long end of the yield curve fall. Now Powell can cut rates because now the short end, the T-bill market is disjointed because there's he's done his job. Another couple of weeks of this, and everybody will be screaming uncle, and it will play into Trump's ability to cut unbelievably good trade deals.
Mhm.
So again, you know, Trump may be getting, I mean, Trump doing this the way he's doing it may just be like him getting cold feet. It may be a sign of weakness in a way that tells me that he doesn't think he can get the bill passed. And maybe there's, blackmail being, there's negotiating points going on, between him and the Senate that, okay, if you cut interest rates, if you can get Powell to cut interest rates, that will be okay, and blah, 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 blah. And it's all nonsense. Like, that's not what the game is. But you're also having to deal with people who don't understand the game, and they happen to be U.S. senators. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, or they don't care what the game is, and they happen to be U.S. senators. So, it's not that they're not that Powell's working for London by keeping friggin' interest rates high. That's nonsense. That's complete nonsense. And anybody promulgating that idea is cherry picking data. Trump and Powell can be on the opposite sides of an issue, but they both want the same goal. Okay. So how about we leave it there, and we'll pick it up in a few months.
Tom, that sounds great. I always like to give guests the opportunity to a bit about how people can find you. I know we've mentioned gold, goats, and guns, but if people do want to connect with you and find you on social media and so forth, how do they do that?
My social media is really simple. I'm the biggest asshole on Twitter. TFL 1728. I'm the head sneech for a reason, folks. Because the star belly sneeches all bow down to me. I'm kidding, of course. like, so TFL 1728 on Twitter. There's the podcast, Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. It's on every platform. They come out when they come out. This month has been light, but we've been dealing with World War III, so it is what it is. And goldgoatsandguns.com, Patreon/goldgoatsandguns if you want more of this on a regular basis, for the twice weekly market reports and the monthly newsletter. And
Fantastic
access
stuff.
to
Superb. But as usual, I'll put all those links into the show notes that come with this podcast as well. Tom, an absolute pleasure, and look forward to catching up in a few months.
it'll be fun. Let's do it.